You're tuned in to Track Talk on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right.
America's largest all-sports radio station presents the #1 motorsports show in the Midwest for over a decade. Track Talk, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Here are the RacinBoys, Scott Traylor and Kirk Elliott.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Track Talk here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm Scott. He's Kirk. We're the RacinBoys. Todd Surprise flipping the switches here at RacinBoys HQ. And are you rested yet, Kirk?
Almost. It takes a full week. You and I have had enough experience with the Chili Bowl and everything indoors. Gets a little foggy in there, and it was Saturday night. A little bit of fumes in there. You got to get out of your system. It takes about a week to do that, and by this time, I'm just about almost back to 100% normal.
Almost.
How about yourself?
You know, people call what we have the Chili Bowl flu.
Yeah,
they don't call it the fumes that have almost killed you flu. And really, Kirk, let's be fair. The fumes are better this year than they have been in years past.
Right.
But no matter how good a job they do down there, if it's cold outside and they can't open up extra doors to let the fumes out of the building, well, the fumes are there. And it's just part of it. I think most people just assume that, hey, I'm not going to feel good when I leave there. And I didn't really feel that bad this week. I'm a little tired, but I don't feel like I've got the normal Chili Bowl flu like I have had in years past. And I think that those fans that they put down in the corner of the arena that suck out, that they spent another $1 million on those fans down there, I think it made a big difference.
Oh, that made a huge difference. There's no doubt about that. My problem this week is non-Chili Bowl related. I got the second round of the bad cold.
You sure did.
That I'm trying
from
to
the
get
Chili Bowl
shaken up. But no, the sleep patterns are what's
I'm all
what's
messed
different. Normally I can live on about 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
I get up about 6 o'clock in the
Right.
morning, and I've had a hard time getting up this week. But that's normal after the week of the Chili Bowl. But
What time
you
have you
get me
been
into next week, I'm back to normal.
What time do you normally get up, Kirk, on a normal day?
About 6 o'clock in the morning.
And this week?
Oh, I've had a hard time
About 10
getting
o'clock?
up that early. No, about 8.
About 8.
Yeah, it's been hard this week, but a lot of that has to do with we're just going nonstop. It's quite a week for the RacinBoys down there to go through all of what happens down at the Chili Bowl.
And on top of that, it seems like no matter what we do down there, we don't get done till 3 or 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, or when we got to get people out of the hospital at 5 in the morning. So we need to talk to our boy Todd Surprise a little bit here at the start of the show. Todd, now I operate your camera, so I'm going to come in there to you. Todd Surprise, show me your wing. What happened to you? For the folks that are listening on Sports Radio 810, you always can watch us in studio on our cameras just by going to RacinBoys.com and click on TV Live on the media box. Well, Todd has a broken wrist, and we're going to, again, this isn't very good radio for the people that are listening on 810, but the people that are watching online.
Bonus coverage.
Todd, he has a broken wrist because he was jumping up and trying to throw a beach ball back to the fans up in the grandstands. And the fans in the grandstands, they knock the beach balls around to entertain themselves. You see it at all kinds of concerts and different things. Well, we have the beach ball, the victim, right here. And some people have been gracious enough to sign it when Todd fell. Todd grabbed this beach ball, and he attempted to throw it back up to the crowd. And when he did, his feet came out from under him. And next thing you know, Todd ends up with a broken wing, a broken wrist. And this was 10 minutes before Friday night's A-Main. Couldn't have happened at a worse time, could it?
It's probably a situation, Todd, where if you didn't catch your wrist, you'd have probably knocked your head on the floor.
Yeah, I think
something like that, maybe.
I believe so. I believe I caught myself a break, even though I shattered a wrist. I believe.
Turn your microphone up just a little bit there, Todd.
I believe I did catch a break. So, with the falling on the wrist, without the cracking on the head or the hip or
something,
anything else that can happen to older guys,
fall
down like that.
Todd, you had some surgery this week. Is that correct?
I had surgery yesterday. Yeah. Got me in. My wife, we pulled some strings. Got me in. Got me a little surgery happening. 2 pins, 1 plate. 3 weeks later, I'll be back up and rocking and rolling.
And when you say rocking and rolling, you're talking about playing your guitar, right?
I'm ready to.
You can do it.
I can play. I can move. I just can't hold the guitar.
You're not doing any Yngwie Malmsteen today, right?
I can do the tapping with the other hand, but like you say,
maybe some basic Van Halen.
Very
you can do.
basic, very primitive. But the guitar, the doctor said that will be part of the
therapy.
So there you go.
He didn't know who he was talking to when he said that, did he? Anyway, so that happened down at the Chili Bowl, and. So we're sorry that you got hurt down there. Todd had to go home a day early and leave us with all the work down there. Man, oh, man. But we're glad you're okay, buddy. All seriousness, we're glad you're okay because that was a pretty bad deal down there.
It was scary there for a minute.
I walked up to Todd, right? I go up to Todd, and he says, I broke my arm, dude. I just about passed out. And I said, where you at? And I'm up here behind the curtains, and I roll in up there, and he sweat, rolling. He's about ready to go in shock. His arm's all bent looking. It's obvious it's broke. Paramedics are there. They're helping him. And they're saying, well, we can take you in an ambulance. I said, no, you're not going in an ambulance. I'll leave, and we'll go. And we went pretty fast down that 21st Street to get you to the hospital.
Yeah, we did. And
got him dropped off and made it back by the end of the A main so we could do the post-race press conference.
Well, we're glad that you're on the mend, Todd.
I appreciate it.
Never the worst for wear. But we appreciate all your help with us down in Tulsa.
I even got to make an appearance last Saturday, the last 10 minutes of the track talk last week.
That's right, down there.
I don't remember much. I think I was
in La La Land.
Very heavily.
I think I got by the time I picked you up at the hospital and got back down and went to bed, it was about 5.
Yeah, we were both probably lack of sleep.
Oh, there's no doubt. I had a few of the listeners say, you sounded awful tired last week.
You were tired last week.
I was very tired last week. But anyway, what a great finish. Let's talk about the Chili Bowl. Sammy Swindell is going to be joining us here in the next segment on Track Talk. And you ask, why Sammy? He finished second, not Kevin. Kevin has already left for Australia to race down there for the next 10 days or so. So when I was reaching out to get a hold of Kevin, I got a hold of Sammy, and Sammy said, well, yeah, come on, sure, you bet. And why not have him on? Between him and his son, they have now won 9 Chili Bowl Nationals. They've got 9 drillers between the two of them out of 27 events.
And Sammy Swindell is the key cog in all of this. No, Kevin Swindell's done a great job of winning 4 in a row as a driver, but let's be honest here. Sammy Swindell is the brainchild behind this effort over the last 5 years.
Are you saying he's the reason that he's so fast?
Well, he's the guy that knows about the shocks.
Should we ask Sammy if the real reason his boy win, is it because of you, Sammy? That's what we need to ask him. That's the question to ask Sammy. Sammy, your boy's fast. He's a good driver. But does he win because of you?
I think he'll say a lot of it is because of him, but Kevin can drive the race car too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that would be his answer? We'll find out.
I don't know. And I want to ask him, too, some of the fodder that's going on hose heads. Some people were saying that Sammy was blocking once he realized that he wasn't going to be able to give Kevin a run, that he was kind of blocking for Kevin so he could go on and win. I don't think that's the case.
I don't buy that.
You know what I think? And if you listen to his post-race press conference, he says that he felt that Kevin and Kyle Larson were going to burn their tires off, and that he settled down and rolled back a little bit because he was just basically saying that he was waiting for their tires to give up, and he was going to go up there and pass them. And I think that's what he was doing more than anything. He was just settling down, realizing they had to run 55 laps. And we know that Kevin Swindell's tires were down to the cord at the end of the race.
Because anybody who knows Sammy Swindell knows he's not going to give up. I don't care what. For him to sit back and be accused of blocking means that he has already conceded defeat
that's almost
to his
an
own
insult.
son, and that's not Sammy Swindell. He would never do that.
Right. Was there a moment early in that race where you thought Kyle Larson was going to give him a run?
Sure.
See, I'm kind of like Sammy. After listening to that interview, I was watching him. I thought that Kyle Larson might have been racing a little too hard too early. Punishing his car, driving hard, kamikazing in there, doing these sliders. What a great battle between him and Kevin there for a little bit.
Don't you feel he thought he had to? That he was already at a disadvantage from performance, that he had to really get up on the wheel more so than the Swindells who knew what they had and knew that they didn't have to punish the race cars. Kyle Larson thought, hey, I'm at a disadvantage performance-wise. These race cars, I'm going to have to really overdrive this car in order to have a chance to win this race.
I don't think that was it. I think most of the drivers realized the way that they prepped the racetrack prior to the A-Main, that the track was going to take rubber at some point. And I think everybody was racing to the rubber. Everybody wanted to be up front, find the rubber first, get locked down where nobody could pass them, and I think that's what everybody was looking at. I think Kyle Larson knew that I'm going to have about 15, 20 laps till that rubber starts laying down in the dirt. And folks that don't know what that means, laying the rubber down means that the rubber off of the tire starts getting its way into the pores of the racetrack. It causes grip, and if you can hit that grip every time you go through that corner, it's going to give you a performance advantage on traction. And once everybody finds it, then it's single-file racing. It's very difficult to pass. And I think that's exactly what they were doing. I think they all knew the rubber was coming. It was going to lay down, and they were going to have to get to it first.
I'm not going to fault Kyle Larson for what he did. I thought he put on a great show. He slipped up just one time, found himself turned around, and that was it for him. Had that not happened, would he have still had a chance to win the race? I'm not sure about that because the Swindell cars were much better than anybody else on the long runs. If there were no yellow flags and those cars, running down towards 50 laps, they seem to get better, more so than the other cars in the field. So I'm not sure, even had Kyle Larson been able to get a lead at that point, he'd been able to hang on to it.
Well, I'm not sure either. Again, the Swindell cars seem to excel later in the race.
Sure.
They get better as the race goes on. And if you listen to any of one of the interviews, I don't know how many we did with Sammy and Kevin, but they all know that. They all know that they got to be there good at the end. What happens in the first portion of the race really doesn't matter. Just keep yourself into position to win the race early. Have your car good at the end of the race so you can take advantage of your position and then go on and win the race.
Yeah, against the two Swindell cars were pretty even, really. I mean, they're the same car.
I have to disagree with you a little bit there. I think Kevin Swindell's car was a little bit better. Yeah, because every time he was in front of his dad, he was able to put a little separation between them,
But wouldn't Sammy have been able to do the same thing had he been able to get out in front of Kevin? He would have been able to get the same kind of separation.
Yeah, but Sammy did get out front there for a little bit. So a couple laps, right? At the start of the A-Main, he was out in the lead, right? He did lead a portion of it. So I don't know. Well, we're going to have Sammy on. We'll talk to him about all the things that happened there and how he's got to be proud of his son and how the team has to be proud of their 9 drillers now that they have, the most dominating team ever in the history of the Chili Bowl Nationals. That should be pretty good.
And the big question is, can anyone ever do anything with these guys?
Yes.
In the next few years? How long will it last? How long will this domination last with the Swindells at the Chili Bowl?
Hour number 2 of Track Talk on RacinBoys Radio, we will have David Claypool, who is the new owner of RCR, better known as Moberly Racetrack down in Randolph County Raceway now. So they've
it used to be Moberly Speedway.
Yeah, it's been 24 Speedway, Moberly Speedway, Randolph County Raceway now, and I think that's good to start off with a fresh name. And they've tore up all the asphalt. That track went asphalt back in 2000, and they've decided that a lot of people thought that hurt the racetrack when they put the dirt back on it, that it dried up and was hard and slick and burned up a lot of tires. So they've decided to tear up the asphalt, put the dirt back down. So we'll talk to David about what's going on down there, about some of the rules and some of the events and what they can look forward to in 2013, again, down at Randolph County Raceway, better known as Moberly. That's what we've always called it, right?
Moberly Speedway, great facility.
It really, it never ceases to amaze me that we don't get more support with that track, especially after Capital Speedway closed down. You thought it would be a natural transition for those fans that were Capital Speedway over Jeff City to come down there and start going to Moberly, but it just never happened.
It has always struggled with fan support.
So we're going to try to help them out down there, get the word out, and see what they're going to be doing with their track this year. That should be a lot of fun. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, one of the greatest drivers to ever strap in a sprint car, a midget, open wheel car of any kind, even an Indy car, Right, Kirk? He's drove in an IndyCar one time. Sammy Swindell joins us here next on Track Talk.
Track Talk.
Okay, let's choose up. I'll take Jamal and Tutal. You can have Chubbs and Skippy. Let's go. My ball.
Okay. But you got skins.
Not a good negotiator? You don't have to be a good negotiator at McCarthy Chevrolet. McCarthy guarantees the lowest prices on a new Chevy or we'll pay you $10,000. We guarantee there's no need to shop anyplace else. McCarthy Chevrolet, I-35 and Santa Fe, Olathe.
You're listening to Track Talk with the RacinBoys, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet in Olathe, or visit them online at McCarthyChevyKC.com.
Welcome back to Track Talk with the RacinBoys here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, as the big voice guy said. Brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Check them out at kccars.com. Great deals on certified used cars and just 0% interest rates on plenty of new cars and Silverados. Joining us right now on the show is a guy who picked up a second-place finish down at the Lucas Oil Chili Bowl Nationals. He is a 5-time winner of the Chili Bowl. Oh, by the way, a car owner as well, and between his son and himself, 9 drillers. Unbelievable, considering there's only been 27 of these events. Sammy Swindell joins us now. Sammy, how you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
Well, we're doing pretty good. Thanks for getting up early and talking to us. We were going to try to get a hold of Kevin as well, and Kevin has already made it to Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, he's he'll probably be there after a while, but he left the other day to go over there to run a sprint car.
Yeah. Well, Sammy, let's talk about this year's Chili Bowl. First of all, you've got to somewhat be happy with your performance, but you weren't able to outrun Kevin. Let's talk about your performance first.
Well, we had a great weekend. One of my qualifiers, and it seemed like everything I drew started on the poles. We had a great week over there. I mean, we started off the Race of Champions and had a little problem there where we cracked a brake fitting and lost the brakes on about the third lap, so I wasn't able to run as hard as I wanted to. And but come back on Wednesday and had a really good night there, winning that qualifier and drawing the pole again. But it's just a track change. I knew it was going to be hard on the tires. I mean, it seemed like every year it gets a little bit tougher on them over there with the dirt they have. But I knew this year that it was going to be really hard, and we were going to get a lot of tire wear. So I wanted it as hard, any harder than I had to, and
right.
Wound up had a pretty good race there. Kyle Larson was trying to run pretty hard, and the track changed. Had moved up to the top, but when you're leading, you don't want to. If you don't know that, you don't want to change your line just because you think, well, maybe that might look a little better, until you see some reason to move. I usually just stick with what I'm doing, but anyway, I probably waited about a half a lap too late there till I kind of seen them at the top, and they got by, but he kind of caught me going into 3, so I really got slowed up and let Kevin get through. But I was just watching those guys have a good race and trying not to get into any trouble. So
right.
It was a little harder pace than I wanted to run there at the time. So, but.
Yeah. Well, Sammy,
it all worked out for us in the end.
Let me ask you this, Sammy, because I noticed when you were trying to preserve your tire, and we know that now after talking to you after the race, but there was a point where Kyle and Kevin kind of got away from you just a little bit, and you know how these form boards are. Some people get on there and say, oh, Sammy's blocking for Kevin and this and that. I think you made it perfectly clear that you were waiting for them to use up their tires. If I'm not mistaken, you thought they were running maybe a little harder pace than they needed to at that point. Is that correct?
I mean, they both were ahead of me, so it's a little hard for me to block for them.
Well, you heard it, though. I mean, that's what they're saying, that, you're back there racing with the guys behind you. And I never felt that way once. I felt that you were waiting towards the end of the race, that they were going a little too hard, a little too early in my eyes.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. It was just running too hard. And I mean, then once it didn't take but a few laps there, and that Kyle spun. So, I mean, on the restart, I started to run Kevin down, and I thought I was, I knew when I started to catch him coming off he didn't make a good turn getting off the 2. I kind of run up on him, and I said, well, he's going to see me, and he's going to move straight down. And that's exactly what he did. But but then there later in the race, I mean, once it got to where you had to run the bottom, and that was the only place to go, there wasn't much you could do. So, I mean, my car, after that one, I guess we tried some different adjustments, and it made it really tight. So I was kind of conserving, didn't want to use up anything. My car wasn't quite right. Once you're running out there, I mean, especially on the bottom, it doesn't give you a lot of time to free up to do much. So I just kind of let him go, because I knew once we got to the traffic, I mean, it was going to be hard to get through there unless somebody made a mistake. So, well, I'll just kind of conserve here a bit, and then wait a little bit. We had another one. I was able to make some adjustments, and when I slowed down there a little bit, and took off there again, but run right back to him. But then you're in traffic. He's in traffic. I'm in traffic, and there's no place to go.
Right.
Sammy Swindell joining us. He finished second at the Chili Bowl last weekend. Did you feel that yours and Kevin's car were really even throughout the race? It was just more of a product of Kevin getting out front, and if you'd have done the same thing, you would have been able to have the same kind of margin Kevin had?
Well, I think so. I mean, it looked like my car might have been a little bit tighter than his, but, once the track changed, but, you kind of got to be set up you never know exactly what you're going to get. So, I mean, you have to be able to have the car where it's good enough, from the middle to the end. I mean, it's always the last part that pays, the last lap. So, I mean, you got to get to that point, and, that's what I was really worried about, after maybe halfway, that the track that we had, that, I mean, not us, but everybody's going to run into trouble.
Yeah. What do you think about what has transpired here in the last 4 years, 5 years with you winning? How dominant your team has been down there. Do you feel like, and Sammy, I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews that we did, but we did over 60 interviews as the races were going on. And the common theme with all the drivers was, how are they going to beat the Swindells? How are they going to beat the Swindells? And I know that you like to have a little bit of mental warfare with drivers. And the drivers this year, more than any year that I can think of, the Swindell cars were in their heads tremendously. Do you take pleasure in that, Sammy?
Well, yeah. I mean,
right.
It's, if they're talking about what we're doing, they're not concentrating on what they're doing.
Right. And I guess that's whatever everybody I know. When I raced back in the day, I wanted to pull in and be the guy. When they saw the trailer pulling into the parking lot, they knew that was the guy to beat, and they were already concerned. Do you believe in that philosophy? If a guy thinks he's beat, he's beat.
A lot of times, that's definitely, it's a lot easier to beat people off the racetrack than sometimes. And it's just part of the game. And I've been trying to do that for over 40 years.
Right.
And it hasn't always been that dominant at the Chili Bowl. I remember times where you struggle like everybody else. These things go in cycles, do they not?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of that, it's if you look back, I mean, I've had a pretty good run there, since it started. If you go back and look, I've won those 5 times, but there's a lot of times in the top 3 or. But just coming in and driving for somebody, it was always tough to get everything the way you wanted it. And if you go back to when we started, the first time I had my own car, It was pretty dominant. And, there were some years where we did struggle, or some of the cars that drove for people weren't really up to par. So, but the combination that we put together that we've been running has always been, really strong. Because I just tried to put together the best overall package that we could have, and it shows up. We started out the first time we had it. I won, and it's kind of been that way almost ever since. So, it's a lot easier when you have something that really works well to fine tune it and make it better than, leave the event. Man, what do I got to do?
Right.
So we're past the point, and we're just all the time making it slightly better.
Sammy, let me ask you this. Does it come to a point after 4 wins in a row with Kevin that it kind of gets in your crawl a little bit, even though you prepare his car and get it to where it needs to be and build the shocks and do all the things that makes it so special? Does it kind of get in your crawl a little bit, though, that he's finished in front of you 4 years in a row and you've had to finish second to him this many times?
No.
Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
You got to look at it this way. I put 2 cars out there, and where did they finish?
Right, I know. But as a competitor, as the guy behind the wheel, once everything is equal, I know Sammy Swindell hates to run second to anybody, and I just wondered if it means the same when you run second to your own car with your son driving in it.
No, if you really think about it and get in my position, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. That's
definitely I'd like to win, but it's I've come closer than anybody else to beat them.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people wonder that because they know how fierce of a competitor you are and how you hate to run second. But again, when it comes down to it, this is family. This is your blood. This is a car that you prepared. So you take the same kind of pleasure out of seeing him win in that car as you do in your own car. And that's a good thing.
Sammy, I want to get your perspective on this. We've seen in NASCAR where the propensity is if somebody is dominating, they want to change the rules to even up the competition. We've seen the unintended consequences that has caused in NASCAR. You've been around racing a long time. About racing where someone is dominant for a period of time, that is, in my opinion, a good thing for a while. Let the competition determine the outcome. Your feelings about that?
Well, I've been through that, and then a lot of times in my career where we've done something and done a good job, and they say, well, you can't do that anymore. This guy doesn't have that, or this guy can't do that. It's like, but I think, if you do a better job, you should get your reward. And, most of these guys are lazy and they just want to hand it to them. Well, you hear all these different stories, but it probably wouldn't take 20, 30 minutes and our cars could be legal to run anywhere. We change a couple of things that they let us run over there and we could run them anywhere else.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of this, there's big motors there now. There's people with 200-inch motors. Ours are legal. Kevin's gets sold every year, and he gets a new one. He doesn't run the same one every year.
Well, that's interesting.
You could take our cars. You take the little tank off, and you change the arm guards, and it's legal.
Yeah.
What is the square?
You hear about it being light, but how much heavier am I than Kyle Larson?
Right.
40 pounds, 50 pounds?
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, okay.
Okay, well, where do I find 40 or 50 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
You look at Brad Sweet. I got to be 30, 40 pounds heavier than him.
Right.
You put a weight rule on there. It's going to penalize those guys more than it will us.
Right. Well, it's been interesting to watch. I think a lot of people, it's intriguing to go down there to see who can knock off the Swindells off the podium, and I can't wait to do it again. You wanted to get one more question?
No, I was just going to ask you. You brought up the tail tank, the square tail tanks. You're the only ones that are running these things. Why isn't everybody else running them? And Does that change the performance of the race car out there in any
now,
way?
you think he's going to tell you that,
No,
Kurt?
he's not going to say.
He's going to tell you there's a performance advantage.
But what is it with the square tail tanks, and why do you run them on your cars?
Well, I mean, first off, we didn't start it.
Right.
Look at Andy Bondio. He's had them before we did.
Right. I remember that. Right.
He still has it. He has a whole different. I mean, his cars can be legal anywhere.
Well, they don't even have a fuel tank on it. It looks like just from the track, it just looks like it's cut off at the back now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin's won it, 3 years in a row without it. I mean, basically all it is we don't need that much fuel, so why have that big a tank? I mean, you can't. The next smaller one that looks like a tail, won't fit on there. Or looks kind of weird, but really weird. But you got to mount it up to clear the rear end and stuff. But that's all.
Hey,
it's just.
Let me ask you, Sammy. I heard some people say down there in the press conference one night that because of the square bumper around that, it makes it harder to spin you guys out too. Is there any play in there at all to that? Is it make it more difficult for somebody to square up and get into you and push you around out there with that bumper?
Well, do you see a lot of guys spinning other guys out there?
I have seen some guys spin some guys out, yeah.
Yeah, well, you can, but out of all them cars, I mean, how many guys go out there just to spin the other guy out?
Oh, no, I hear what you're saying, yeah, right. No, I'm just repeating what they were saying. I'm not trying to say that I think that that's what it's for or if it helps in that department. I was just repeating what I was told in a press conference one night, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, it's hard. It would be harder to do that. I mean, you can get against the one corner, and you can. You're probably going to take yourself out too.
Right.
Pretty much guaranteed. So, maybe it deters that, but I mean, most of the time, most people can't keep up with it anyway. So that's a moot point.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
What are your sprint car plans this year? What's next?
Just run the World Outlaw schedule.
Yeah. Are you going to run for the points, or are you just going to see how it goes? Are you going to commit to it through the entire season this year? Or how's that work for you?
I mean, since my car on Untitled Querying here at Big Game Tree Stands owns the car and sponsors it, I mean, if we get, so far down the road and we see we don't have a chance, I mean, we can always have that option and not finish in the year.
Right.
It's like if you're so far out, that's an option that we have, other than if you had a corporate sponsor where you sign an agreement to run the full schedule and then you have to do that.
Right. Quickly before we let you go, because we're up against the break, and I want to ask you a question about this. Hoosier coming back into the World of Outlaws, Goodyear's out, Hoosier's in. Your thoughts about all that?
Well, I mean, it's another tire. I mean, they do a good job. I mean, the biggest advantage they have over the one that we've had is if they do have an issue or they have a problem, they can resolve it, or that's all their business is making racing tires. So,
right.
I mean, they can't. They've got more at stake as far as making the product right. And they don't have a union company, so they can work overtime or weekends and resolve it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be better for us in that respect. And I mean, a change like that. I mean, I look forward to that. I think we can get onto that as faster than anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's all positives from our side.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, Sammy, good luck to you in the World of Outlaw season. Congratulations on your run down there with your team, first and second place at the Chili Bowl Nationals. And I'm sure we're going to see you out there on the road somewhere beating up down the trail with the sprint cars. Thanks so much for taking the time with us today.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Sammy. Sammy Swindell, let's just say it, one of the greatest of the greatest. There's a lot of great sprint car drivers around the world, but when you think of who maybe the top 5 sprint car drivers that ever have strapped into a sprint car, he's got to be one of those top 5 guys.
Yeah, and the most interesting answer is the question you asked, does that bother you that your son beat you 4 years in a row? And he said, no. You know, he's at the point in his life now to where he takes great satisfaction out of putting a winning car out on the racetrack, and that was his winning car that won, and he's good with that. Very interesting answer.
All right, we're going to open up the phone lines to the top of the hour, 913-381-810, 913-381-810, if you want to talk about last week's Chili Bowl, what's going on in the local racing scene, a little NASCAR. We'll get into some of the testing that happened down at Charlotte yesterday, but give us a call, 913-381-810. You're listening to Track Talk, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet.
Track Talk. You're listening to Track Talk with the RacinBoys, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet in Olathe, or visit them online at McCarthyChevyKC.com.
McCarthy Chevrolet, I-35 in Santa Fe on Rawhigh Road, just not far from downtown Kansas City. Get out there. Tell Brian Schaefer and those guys we have come here to purchase a new vehicle. I'm going out there Wednesday, Kirk. Did you know?
You're about ready to trade in?
I'm going out there Wednesday, going to visit with the good folks out at McCarthy Chevrolet. Got some things working on for this year. And it could be the day. And, you know, as much as I hate to think about paying more for gas or spending more on a little bit of mileage, because the old Equinox now, it's got 225,000 miles on it. It gets a fair amount of gas mileage. But I think I'm going to step up and buy me a new Silverado pickup. You know, we've got all these.
You've had one of those before?
I've had one of those before, yeah. But because we're getting ready to get into the pay-per-view stuff, again, don't forget, RacinBoys made the announcement last week. Live pay-per-view on RacinBoys.com. Our very first event will be out at Tucson International Raceway Park, Tucson, Arizona. It's the very first race of the Lucas Oil ASC Sprint Car Dirt Series season. And it will be live, paid per view on RacinBoys.com. You can order now if you want. You can buy each day for $15, or you can buy both days for $25, save you $5 by not buying them individually. So go to RacinBoys now, purchase now. It's going to be the inaugural paid per view event on RacinBoys.com. We're looking forward to it. You looking forward to that, Kurt?
I can't wait. It's about 5 weekends from this weekend.
About 5 weekends away. Looking really forward to it. Don't forget, we're going to have David Claypool on, hour number 2, exclusively on RacinBoys.com. So when we get done here at Sports Radio 810, make sure you go over to RacinBoys.com and click on TV Live on the media section, and it will bring you to our in-studio cameras. Let's get to the phones, 913-381-810, 913-381-810. Bob wants to talk about the Chili Bowl. Hey, Bob.
Hey, guys, it's Bob. Boy, Kirk, Scott, I tell you what, I was down there at the Chili Bowl, and I seen a whole different deal than you all did. I tell you what, I mean, you can listen to – I don't take anything away from Sammy. He's a great driver. Always has been.
Yeah.
Puts on a good job down there. But the blocking was – I mean, I talked with Doug Clark down there in the motel after the races that night. Everybody was saying the same thing. It'll be on TV, I think, February 10th. Watch him coming off a 2. I mean, you know, the race was so good the first 10 or 15 laps. It was like, I've been doing this since I missed the first 4, 92, I think was my first year. You used to have good racing back then. It was, you know, the P.J. Jones and Paige Jones put on a great show. The slide jobs, it was great.
So you're saying it wasn't a good race, is what you're saying?
It was not a good race. It hasn't been for several years, Scott. I think, what was it, 3 years ago? There wasn't even a pass for the lead. It was
I've heard this. Bob.
They need to change the format of the race. I think you need to qualify Tuesday, Wednesday.
Are you kidding me? Time trials?
No, I mean, do your qualifier just like you do each night.
Okay.
But instead of having it every night, you need to do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday night, run your 2 E's, your 2 F's, your 2 G's, your 2 all that stuff and everything else, and your race of champions. And then Saturday night, instead of having a 12-hour marathon all day long, come in Saturday evening, run your 2 D's, your 2 B's, or C's, your 2 B's, and your A.
5 minutes.
And you'll have better racing because they are using up the track on Saturday night. By the time 10, 15 laps into the feature, it's a 1-lane racetrack. I mean, you know, my 4-year-old granddaughter, I think if I could put her in a car and tell her just stay on the bottom, if she could see over the steering wheel, I think she could finish the A feature.
Well, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't think it's quite as easy as what you say it is, but I understand what you're saying. It took rubber before halfway, and I get that. But let me be fair here.
Ready for the A feature.
Bob.
I mean, we've seen good racing all week long. A feature time, you're going, boy, I can't wait for this. But for the last, I know 3, 4, 5 years, and I'm not just saying because of Swindells. They do a great job. I mean, there's nothing at that. But when you don't have a track to race on, maybe you ought to, look at this.
Well, I thought the race between Kevin and Kyle Larson was fantastic for 10 laps.
Oh, it was great. It was great. That's what I said. It brought back days of, I don't know if you remember years back there, Paige and P.J. Jones put on a whale of a show, the very same show until they got involved in an accident. I think Kenny Schrader spun and collected the 2 leaders down there. But if that was good racing, Leland McSpadden and them used to put on some great shows and stuff there. You really win. I mean, you enjoyed the racing all week long, but the feature, the A feature, boy, you just couldn't wait for that. And anymore, it's just got to where it's. I hate to say it, but it's probably the worst race of the week.
Well, do they do the complete, redo of the racetrack like they used to? Do they do as much to redo the racetrack as
do they rip it up enough?
Do they rip it up enough? Because if they do, it shouldn't matter how many laps they put on it during the day.
Yeah, it's too much racing. I mean, I think it's just too much racing on a racetrack in one day. That's what I said. I think if you could just back up and take one qualifying night away, and you qualify Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah.
Friday night you can go into your 2 E's, your 2 F's, your 2 H's, and all that. Run your race of champions, and then Saturday night you would have. I think you would have a far better show. I mean, they got a great.
How could they do that if they got 250 entries? Well, would they have enough to get all of the qualifying in with that many cars?
Well, you hate to see anybody cap a deal, but hey,
You know what I think, Bob? Listen, we're limited on time here. We're almost up against the top of the hour. But I will say this. Maybe bringing in some new dirt. They always bring in new dirt. They always bring that dirt in. But maybe they need to bring more in because you've got to admit it's the same dirt they've used for years and years and years. There's rubber in that dirt even when they store it. So when they bring it back out, lay the track down, that rubber particles are still in there, and that leads to it getting rubber on the track. And I think that maybe if they were to, and it'd be expensive, but I think Emmett and them probably could afford it, you could just take out what dirt they've used the last couple of years, bring in some fresh clay that is nice and clean without any rubber in it, and I think that would help a little bit.
Well, one thing I do know about Emmett Hahn is he is a race fan too, and if he doesn't like the way the racing is, he'll make changes to it, no doubt about it. And Lanny Edwards the same way.
But you sure that your feelings, Bob? Oh, was Bob gone?
Yeah, he's
okay. But Bob could be having some emotion tied to watching the Swindells win all the time too.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you got to listen to people like Bob. They're the ones that are buying the tickets and paying to see these races. So you got to listen.
2
to
minutes.
Folks.
All right, Kirk. We're going to get into some NASCAR in hour number 2, but quickly they tested down at Charlotte yesterday the new generation car. It's the same chassis but different bodies on them. 194 miles per hour yesterday by Allmendinger. And or was it Amarola?
Eric Amarola.
Yeah, that's who it was. But how about this? That's faster than the track record, and Carl Edwards was second fastest yesterday. So good news for Carl, the type of tracks that he excels on, 1.5-mile tracks, and with a lot of banking. Carl, with the bad year that he had last year, not making it into the chase for the championship after battling for the championship the year before, he's got to be optimistic about the way things went down at Charlotte.
I think Carl's going to make a comeback with Jimmy Finning as his crew chief, but these cars got a lot more downforce than the older cars, more grip, and I think it should result in better racing on these intermediate tracks.
That's not what they're saying, more grip, more downforce. They're saying
more
less
mechanical grip.
Mechanical grip.
Mechanical grip and more downforce.
They've taken the downforce away on the body and give more mechanical grip. They've put a smaller spoiler on it. The guys are saying the cars are really loose. They're moving around a lot. So that means less downforce on the body itself. But they're trying to give the guys some advantages when it comes to mechanical grip and the way that they make those cars turn through the corner on camber and on, tinkering with the rear end and moving them around quite a bit. So you're going to see a lot of changes in that department from years past with the new car. All right, hour number 2 coming up. Don't forget, all you have to do is go to RacinBoys.com, click on Media. You'll see a little drop-down window. It says Live TV. You'll click on that. You'll hang out with us in the studio. We hang out with the people on the chat room.
20.
It's a pretty good time, hour number 2. And it is also brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Again, check them out at kccars.com. Get out and see them today out in Olathe. Make your purchase and tell them the Racing Boys sent you. For Jed, for Todd, for Kirk, I'm Scott. We'll see you next week here on Sports Radio 810.